Hello everybody, Drummer Dad here with part 2 of our video on finding inspiration and creativity around the drum kit. It's I wasn't actually planning on a part 2 of this, but after I finished the first video and I started reflecting on, some of the things that I said, watched it, and, because like I said, I don't really rehearse my videos. I don't even, which I probably at some point should start doing, is at least writing down my bullet points so I at least have them so I don't miss anything. But I'm pretty much just talking off the cuff. And after I finished that video, I started thinking that I only spoke about one side of the coin when developing creativity as far as external things that you can do to try to develop that. And there is the other side of that coin, and that is playing patterns. And what I mean by that is, okay, there's something that's called permutation, and it basically means you take a pattern like a paradiddle, right, left, right, left, left, and you just shift the first note. So instead of it being right, left, left, it's left, left, right. So, and then you switch through for the paradiddle, starting on each note in consecutive, in turn, silent, like, wow, can't think of that word, but each note in turn, and you just work down the line, and you'll have 8 different ways, to play a paradiddle, because there's 8 notes being played in a paradiddle. So that essentially one rudiment becomes 8 if you permutate it. Now there's guides that you can different books you can work out of. For myself, ultimately, I'm 2 books that I'm working out of right now that are really good for just playing a lot of different patterns and permutations and stuff like that. Are a book called FourWay Coordination by Marvin Dahlgren, I believe, and Stick Control by George Walker Stone, I want to say. I hope I'm not wrong on those authors. But these 2 books have, a lot of different patterns that you play to develop your sticking. And, stick control is really just all on sticking. FourWay Coordination actually works on all 4 limbs, so you're playing bars that are given something for every limb, and you're playing rhythms like that because you're playing certain patterns that are developing rhythms off of those patterns, and that's what I was eventually getting at, is you start developing patterns just through the sticking. So that's like the other side of the coin to listening to people that you really like, is, so once you have that in or simultaneously, it's not like you have to do one or the other in turn or anything like that. You can be doing, but you should probably be doing both at the same time. But so as you're filling your head with the music that you want to hear and the drummers that you want to eventually be able to use from their styles, now you got that going in, so you got a kind of a sound that you have an idea that you want to do, and then you start throwing all these patterns in there, so it allows your sticking to get to a point where you can play what comes into your head and sounds in your head can then come out in your hands, and you can, you'll be able to articulate what's inside, outside. That's ultimately what I'm getting at. Plus, especially with both, with stick control and with FourWay Coordination, the rhythms that you're playing, the patterns that you're playing in that produce their own rhythmic sounds, and all of them are pretty cool. So as you work through those or whatever book. That's just what I'm working through. I didn't really mean this video to be a pitch for stick control or four-way coordination, although I'm not unhappy if it is somewhat, because there are really two books that I think every drummer should at least be familiar with to a point. But anyway, yeah, you get the patterns that you're putting together in those two books will really, there's some cool stuff, and especially once you work it up to some higher speeds, to where you get a little bit more flavor out of what you're doing, and especially with a book like Four-Way Coordination, because you're playing something for each limb. So ultimately, I have my practice kit set up. So ultimately, I'm playing both hands on my practice pad, and I'm playing my my two practice pedals. But when I used to practice it on my kit, I'd be using my hi-hat for my right hand, my hi-hat pedal for my left foot, and then my bass drum for my right foot, and my snare for my left hand. And between those four, the combinations that they give you, you get some pretty cool rhythmic patterns going there, and they sound pretty nice. So then when you start expanding that and you start saying, okay, instead of maybe playing this one on the hi-hat, I'll play this one on the tom. And you can really, man, through four-way coordination, you can really come up with a lot of just really cool rhythms and sounds, patterns, So that's kind of the other side of the coin there, is you want to give your head the sounds that you like, so you can vibe with them, and so they can come out of you. You take them in and then you bring them out with your own flavor, but you make sure you're doing it with sounds that you like. We already covered that in the first video, but now you want to make sure that your hands and your feet can speak what's in your mind. Ultimately, you're communicating while you're playing these drums or whatever instrument that you're playing, but ultimately you're communicating something to someone. So it's kind of like if you, the more that you practice on the mechanics of speech, especially if you're learning another language or something like that, you need to, which a musical instrument is another language. So once you get to that point, now you want to learn, you want to maximize, you want to strengthen all the tools that you have in that language. So as a drummer, it means you want to do finger exercises, you want to do wrist exercises, you want to you want to do stretching and all that kind of stuff on your fingertips, because your fingers are what's controlling your sticks. Your wrists is where your power is coming from. So your hands, your wrists, your fingers, you want to really be working on those. Your feet and your ankles and your calves, you want to be working on those too, because they're going to, give you, they're the tools that you're going to be using to create music. So you want them well oiled. And then a lot of these rudiments and like patterns and stuff in stick control and four-way coordination, they're kind of like the equivalent of tongue twisters. So if you get good at saying tongue twisters, generally so I got an itch in my nose. Generally, the whole point of tongue twisters is to help your whole speech become more eloquent. I was never very good at tongue twisters, but I understand the purpose of why they're around and what people kind of originally were using them for. And it's the same thing with your rudiments and permutations of sticking and all that. It's the same difference. You are creating tongue twisters for your muscle memory in your hands and feet. And the better that you can be at flying through them, the better you can just create new patterns and do things on the fly and not be shackled by, having to start doing something and then you run amok because it all falls apart. It basically, when you're drumming and you're playing something especially when you're playing something that you're learning, you're learning for the first time or second, third, whatever. You're still learning it. There tends to be times where like it's like you're on a train and you're getting ready to run off the tracks, and it's like, oh no, I got it back one. Oh, I'm coming back on. Oh, I got it back one. And when you fall off, when you come off of those tracks, everything falls apart. And that's you just you've stopped playing now, and you're like, okay, back up again. Or you picked up your sticks and you just continued through that part, and that's another topic. But my point is it's all of this stick control and four-way coordination stuff will number one help lessen the train wrecks for sure, because you'll be able to articulate things better with your hands and feet. But two, the patterns that you're going to be playing in those books will really give you a lot of flavor and spice to pull out of yourself for later. For like when you're playing a song, you might be like, oh man, wait a minute, let me do this little cool, neat little fill, and it's, oh yeah, you know what? Wait a minute, that's from page 2 of four-way coordination. I remember, and just stuff like that. Like you'd be surprised how often those patterns come into play, and then accents. So you got permutations, but then you also maybe you're accenting the one. And then the next time around, maybe you accent the 2, and then the 3, and the 4. Or maybe you accent, the end on the first one, you know what I mean? And then move around, accent the end on the second one, So, like, thinking about that concept, you can take the Paradiddle and you can play it, like, God, 20-some different ways probably. I'd have to really think about it. How many, if you changing the accent to each note, and then, I mean, you got a lot of stuff that you can work on just off of a paradiddle. Different rhythmic sounds and things that are going to happen just from that right, left, right, left, left pattern alone. So when you start thinking that there's all kinds of other rudiments that all have their own patterns, and then you start thinking that like these different books offer different patterns you can play, you'll start seeing the concept how knowing a bunch of patterns on your hands and feet will help you vastly in being creative on the drum kit and writing your own tunes. It's remarkable how the difference that you'll see when you do that. I started working on that book a little bit a long time ago, just before I had finished, and I was actually trying to work through it to learn jazz. It was like my one little try, and I was getting pretty good at making some rhythms and stuff in it, and working into it. But it just, like I said, then another story. But I know from past experience that patterns in books like four-way coordination and stick control will help you with creativity, and I know from present experience that it will as well, at least for me. And it's enough that I think it's worth checking out, because the more patterns that you know, the more ultimately fills that you know, and the more sound you can create. So anyway, should be the last one in this series, and we got some other stuff, but thanks for watching. Have a great day, or afternoon, evening, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.